After a grueling and ultimately futile training session in the Hyperbolic Time Chamber, Vegeta's relentless pursuit of power takes a dark turn, awakening a dormant, primal evil within him that threatens to consume not only his sanity but the entire universe. The air in the Hyperbolic Time Chamber hung heavy, thick with the scent of sweat and ozone. Days, or perhaps years, had passed within this distorted reality, each second an eternity of grueling training. But for Vegeta, Prince of all Saiyans, it was never enough. He was always a step behind, always chasing the ghost of Kakarot's power. This time, however, something was different. The frustration, the anger, the burning need to surpass his rival had reached a fever pitch, a boiling point that threatened to consume him entirely. He had pushed his body and mind beyond their limits, delving into a realm of training so intense, so brutal, that it bordered on self-destruction. He stood in the center of the desolate white expanse, his body trembling, his breath ragged. His Super Saiyan form flickered, the golden aura unstable, tinged with an unsettling crimson hue. He had been attempting a new technique, a desperate gamble to unlock a power beyond anything he had ever achieved. A power that whispered promises of ultimate dominance. But the technique had backfired. Instead of unlocking a new level of power, it had cracked open something else. Something deep within his subconscious. Something ancient and malevolent. He felt it now, a cold, insidious presence slithering through his veins, whispering in a voice that was both alien and terrifyingly familiar. He collapsed to his knees, clutching his head, a scream tearing from his throat. The scream was not just his own. It was layered, distorted, interwoven with a guttural roar that seemed to emanate from the very depths of his being. As the scream subsided, a chilling silence descended upon the time chamber. Vegeta slowly raised his head, his eyes wide, pupils dilated, irises glowing with a malevolent crimson light. The golden aura of his Super Saiyan form was gone, replaced by a dark, shadowy energy that crackled around him like a living thing. A cruel, predatory grin stretched across his face, a grotesque parody of his usual arrogant smirk. "Kakarot," he whispered, his voice a distorted rasp, laced with an undercurrent of something monstrous. "You will be the first to witness the true power of a Saiyan prince." He vanished from the time chamber, leaving behind only an echoing silence and a lingering sense of dread. Back on Earth, the Z-fighters were gathered at Capsule Corp, enjoying a rare moment of peace. Goku, ever the optimist, was eagerly anticipating Vegeta's return, hoping for a good sparring session. He sensed his rival's ki approaching, but something felt wrong. This energy signature was different, darker, more sinister. Suddenly, the doors to the gravity room burst open, and Vegeta stood there, silhouetted against the light. But this was not the Vegeta they knew. His armor was cracked and scorched. His hair was matted with sweat and something that looked disturbingly like blood. His eyes burned with that same malevolent crimson light, and the dark energy that surrounded him pulsed with an almost tangible hunger. "Vegeta?" Goku began, a knot of unease tightening in his stomach. The creature that wore Vegeta's face grinned, a chilling, inhuman expression. "Vegeta is gone," it rasped. "There is only the prince." Before anyone could react, the prince lunged, moving with a speed and ferocity that surpassed anything they had ever seen. He was a whirlwind of savage attacks, each blow laced with a dark energy that seemed to corrode and decay whatever it touched. Gohan was the first to fall. A scream cut short as the prince's fist slammed into his chest, leaving a gaping, smoking wound. Piccolo fared no better, his regenerative abilities overwhelmed by the sheer destructive power of the prince's attacks. Goku, horrified, powered up to Super Saiyan Blue, engaging the prince in a desperate battle. But even his most powerful techniques seemed to have little effect. The prince was relentless, his attacks growing more savage, more monstrous with each passing moment. What happened to you, Vegeta?" Goku cried out, dodging a blast of dark energy that vaporized a nearby building. The prince laughed, a chilling, inhuman sound. "I have evolved, Kakarot. I have embraced the true power of our heritage, the power that you are too weak, too sentimental to accept." As they fought, Goku began to understand. The technique Vegeta had attempted, it hadn't just unlocked a new power. It had awakened something ancient, something primal within his Saiyan blood, a dormant evil that had lain hidden for generations. The true, unbridled essence of the Saiyan race, stripped of all pretense of honor or control. An uncontrollable rage. The battle raged across the city, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. Buildings crumbled, the earth trembled, and the sky itself seemed to weep under the onslaught of dark energy. The prince was not just stronger, he was different. He fought with a savage joy, a lust for destruction that was both terrifying and heartbreaking. He was no longer a warrior seeking strength, he was a monster reveling in chaos. He was slowly getting the upper hand on Goku, beating him down. It seemed hopeless. As Goku lay battered and broken, the prince stood over him, his crimson eyes burning with triumph. "Any last words, Kakarot?" he sneered. Goku looked up at his former rival, his heart filled with a profound sadness. "Vegeta, this isn't you. Fight it." The prince laughed again, the sound devoid of any trace of humanity. "Fool," he hissed, "this is the real me, and soon it will be all that remains." He raised his hand, a sphere of dark energy forming in his palm, ready to deliver the final blow. But then, a voice, small but firm, cut through the din of destruction. "Father!" It was Trunks, his young face streaked with tears, his eyes filled with a desperate plea. He stood before the prince, a tiny figure defying a monstrous god. The prince hesitated, the energy sphere flickering. For a moment, a flicker of the old Vegeta seemed to surface, a flicker of the proud warrior, the reluctant father. But it was only a moment. The crimson light in his eyes flared, and the monstrous grin returned. "Out of my way, boy," he growled. "This doesn't concern you." "It does concern me," Trunks cried out, his voice trembling. "You're my father, and I won't let you do this." Trunks powered up, his own Super Saiyan aura flaring to life, a beacon of defiance in the encroaching darkness. He knew he was no match for the prince, but he had to try. He had to reach the man buried beneath the monster. The prince watched his son, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Then, with a roar of rage, he launched himself at Trunks. The battle that followed was short, but brutal. Trunks fought with the courage of desperation, but he was hopelessly outmatched. Yet, with every blow he took, with every cry of pain, he chipped away at the monster that had consumed his father. He was fighting for his father, and he would not give up. And then, as the prince raised his hand to deliver the final blow, something shifted. A memory, perhaps. A feeling, a connection to the son he was about to destroy. The prince froze, his hand trembling, the dark energy dissipating. He looked at Trunks, at the boy's bruised and bloodied face, and for the first time since his transformation, a flicker of recognition, of horror crossed his features. With a guttural scream, a scream of pain and self-loathing, the prince recoiled, clutching his head. The dark energy that surrounded him pulsed violently, then imploded, throwing him back against a crumbling wall. The crimson light faded from his eyes, replaced by the familiar black. He looked around at the devastation, at the fallen Z-fighters, at his own trembling hands, and the horror of what he had become washed over him. What have I done?" he whispered, his voice choked with despair. The transformation was not permanent, not yet. But the darkness remained, a lurking presence within him, a constant reminder of the monster he could become. The prince had returned, but he was forever changed. The descent had begun, and the universe trembled. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. The darkness within Vegeta remained, a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. And the next time it did, there might be no coming back. The prince's fall was a tragedy, a warning of the darkness that lurks within even the most powerful warriors. And it was a chilling reminder that sometimes the greatest battles are not fought on the battlefield, but within the very soul.